need to go more in depth on someone who really understands this, and that's why we've called on Daniel Hochheiser, a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer, as well as a former prosecutor. He's got quite the resume. And Daniel Hochheiser, we're so pleased to have you back here on America's Forum.
Thanks for having me, JD.
Daniel, let's talk first about this autopsy report. It indicates Brown was shot in the hand at close range. Does this seem to indicate that he may have been reaching for the Ferguson police officer's gun?
The autopsy you're referring to has been leaked to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I have not seen the report because there's only this leak to the newspaper. And my understanding is that, yes, there was a gunshot to the right thumb of Michael Brown, which seems to suggest that there may have been a reaching for Officer Wilson's gun inside or near the car.
So Daniel, my understanding is this is actually the third autopsy performed, and as we know, there's been riots and all kinds of problems over there in protest to this. Why was this not found earlier in the earlier autopsies, or why was it not released?
Well, we have 3 autopsies, you're correct. We have the official autopsy, which was the one leaked to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. We have an independent autopsy, which was sponsored by the family of the deceased, which was conducted by Michael Baden, a very well-known New York City forensic pathologist. And then we have the federal autopsy, which is ongoing, which I don't believe has been made public yet, and I don't even know if it's complete. So we do have all these reports, none of which we really have access to firsthand, and they do seem to suggest that the reports of the analysis of the body does contradict a lot of the witness accounts about what occurred.
And the witness accounts, you know, were a part of the problem. They made it sound like it was an unarmed man that was shot in the back as he was fleeing, and people were believing this and acting accordingly, and now it's really looking like that is not the case. And why was the eyewitness, who was one of the suspects, why did they believe him over the officer?
Well, I think there has been a rush to judgment, so to speak. We have 4 hours of testimony by Officer Wilson in the grand jury, which is secret. I haven't heard it, you haven't heard it, only the grand jurors have heard it. We don't know what he said. So how you could come to a conclusion about what happened without hearing that testimony and analyzing all the physical evidence in the case is really not wise. We could talk about what we do know. What we do know is that there were 6 shots. There were 2 shots to the head, 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the thumb, 1 to the forearm. None of the shots seem to have come into the back of the deceased. So it does appear that the deceased was facing Officer Wilson at the time of the shooting. And we also know there was blood found in the car, which belongs to Brown. And we know that there was tissue that belongs to Brown found on the exterior driver's side of the car. So something happened at that car, and then the shooting continued.
Daniel, you made mention of the fact that this official autopsy was leaked to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Sir, in your opinion, was the newspaper acting responsibly by printing these reports?
I think the newspaper was acting responsibly. They were doing their job. The person who was irresponsible was the leaker. It's really sort of outrageous to leak grand jury evidence in bits and pieces to the press, which really has at least the appearance of trying to influence the outcome of the grand jury investigation. You know, in New York, I don't know what the law is in Missouri. In New York, that would trigger an investigation that could lead to arrests.
And this seems to take what should be a judicial proceeding and politicize it in terms of the courtroom of public opinion rather than the room where the grand jury is impaneled. So you have a situation now where you are hearing from people who are already jumping to the next level, saying if the grand jury doesn't bring charges, well, there's going to be civil unrest. And against that backdrop, does this add pressure to the grand jury to look beyond the evidence that's presented, to be cognizant of community feelings?
Well, I hope not, and that's one of the reasons we have secret grand jury proceedings where the identities of the grand jurors are not public. So they should be able to do their job without fear of anybody's backlash against them. I hope that's the case. We have an Officer Wilson who testified in the grand jury. There are 3 autopsy reports. The grand jury may be considering, I don't know if they're going to consider the federal one, but the other 2. And then we have all kinds of physical evidence, like where is the clothing of the deceased? Where are the bullet entrance and exit wounds in the clothing? Nobody's seen that. I haven't seen that. Dr. Bodden, who did the family's autopsy, never saw that. There are a lot of unanswered questions here. And of particular interest also is this audio recording of the shots. There are 2 series of shots with a pause in the middle, and that could be key.
Now, Daniel, new eyewitnesses who actually are wanting to remain anonymous, they're now saying that he did attack the officer, that Brown came after him and that, you know, he charged him, and one of the gunshot wounds, they say, went to his forehead. That might back that up. They also say there were drugs found in his system. Does this sound like somebody that's, you know, under some sort of drug dementia or something like that?
Well, I wouldn't make too much yet of the marijuana, the THC found in Brown's system, because we don't know what quantity of marijuana was in his system, whether he was intoxicated by the marijuana or not. But it's first of all, he's a person who, without argument, just robbed a convenience store, and he's smoking marijuana. And apparently Officer Wilson told him and Dorian Johnson to move out of the middle of the street and move to the sidewalk, which preceded the altercation at the car with Officer Wilson. So it doesn't appear from the evidence I know of that this Brown deceased individual was completely in the right. It seems like he doesn't have completely clean hands at best.
And we will have to leave it there. Daniel Hochheiser, we appreciate your background as a former prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, joining us from Newsmax, New York, for your analysis of what is transpiring in Ferguson, Missouri. Sir, we thank you very much. And we will continue with America's Forum following this Newsmax.